Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 12, Collective Bargaining Structures, Strategies, and Skills, presented by me, Crystal. So, three of the key points that I will discuss in this PowerPoint is the collective bargaining process, the strategies and skills to bargain, and bargain-related reforms. So, just a little bit of background information. We all know that the private sector employees have received their right to form unions much more earlier than public sector employees. Public sector employees didn't receive that right until 1960s with Kennedy's executive order. The National Labor Relations Law protects private sector employees. And what's interesting is that both private sector employees can have unions and they can have non-unionized employees protected by this labor board. On the public sector side, the Public Employees Relations Board protects the employees, and they adhere to the labor laws that have been implemented by states. So the states decide what the labor laws are, and some of these labor laws can limit the protection that private sector employees would receive. So, for example, firefighters and police officers and anybody in public safety technically can't strike, and this is just to protect citizens. So this is what I mean this is what I mean when I say that public sector employees have limited labor law protection. But they're seen by the Public State Employee Relations Board. And on the private side, the National Labor Relations Board protects the employees, or employees can come to these labor relations board and speak to someone regarding maybe a neglected or a violation that the employer didn't refuse to consider union formation, or refuse to negotiate a mandatory bargaining subjects. And some of these mandatory bargaining subjects are wages, hours, and working conditions. So let's start with the collective bargaining process. As you can see in this little diagram that I have here, it's a three-step process, and it's an ongoing cycle as needs and wants from unions come up. So the first step in this cycle is that how do each parties organize to bargain? So both parties, employers and employees, determine what is going to be bargained for. So they study the previous negotiation, they look over it, and they also look over anything new that the managerial decision has decided to implement. And this managerial decision usually is in a form of email or in a form of a notice that employees receive. So maybe the union is feeling alerted because there's been a managerial decision to do XYZ, but they need to negotiate on it. So each party talks amongst themselves, and they'll elect a representative to speak on their behalf. And then on to the most interesting and probably the most vital part of this process. It's the second step of this bargaining process, and it's the bargaining. So both parties coming together, unions coming up with their needs and wants, and the employers coming up with the numbers and what they can and can't do. So they'll sit down, and honestly, it'll get pretty heated. It'll get pretty heated if there's this attitude of there's this power attitude. If there's this power attitude or this win-lose attitude, then ultimately there'll be negative consequences. Neither party will feel happy, and there'll be a lot of emotions, time kind of wasted in this table. However, if both parties come to the consensus that they're going to bargain in good faith, which bargaining in good faith means having the mutual intentions to negotiate on an agreement and following these next step strategies, then it'll be a pretty successful win-win situation. So the first thing is both parties should have a really good attitude. Both parties should be coming in with, okay, maybe we won't get everything that we're asking for, or maybe we won't implement everything that we want the employees to do. So maybe this will happen. I'm assuming that they'll each come up with their plan Bs. So the important thing is to separate people from the problem and focus on the interests, and hopefully come to the conclusion that there should be a mutual gain from both parties. So say, for example, the union comes, okay, we want a wage increase, and we want to stop working on Fridays, and and the management's going like, okay, wait, we can't do that. We can't give you an increase in wages because fortunately we have this. Maybe in our next negotiation we can sit down if we have additional funds, or if we had a really good year. But what we can do is maybe give you every other Friday off. So because we still do need you guys to work here. So I mean, like I said, there's a mutual agreement. There's a mutual understanding. Both parties are looking at what is beneficial to them, but at the same time they're looking at the best interest. Hopefully the unions are looking for the best interest of the company and the organization, and the employers are looking at the best interest for our employees. How can we keep them happy? So once that happens, they've come to a consensus. So let's say that the employer has decided, you know what, okay, we'll give you every other Friday off. We won't give you that wage increase, but we'll give you every other Friday off. And employees say, great, fine. We'll talk about wages some other times. So they do what is called administering the contract, which just means they write out, there's a written contract written out, signed by all parties, and now management basically sends like management and the union send like an email message to the employees, and this is what we came up with, this is what's going to happen in the next couple of, either it could be years, or in the next couple of months, or in the next 6 months. This is what's going to happen. This is what's been implemented. So that's how they administered the contract. Notify employees that the XYZ has been implemented. The flip side of this is kind of like, in recent times, there's been a desire for to decrease the power of unions. So unions have become pretty strong in certain areas, in certain counties, in certain state universities, and it's having a trickle down effect to the economy. So in recent times, there's been talk of decreasing the power of unions. And of course, we all know that they're protected by a labor relations board, so everything's pretty much sneaky. One of the things that there has been talk about is not having union fees mandatory. And the problem with this is that it will decrease union power. And decreasing union power could potentially decrease or lessen the voice of an employee. And I put myself in this example. If that were to pass, if union dues were no longer mandatory, I honestly would not out of the goodness of my heart contribute to my union, because I am a struggling student working full time who needs to pay their student loans. So for me, it doesn't make sense to give, even if it's as minimal as $5, to give them that $5. I'd rather have that $5 to pay off loans or, my bills. So, and I think most people do have that attitude. I strongly believe that if mandatory union dues were flipped and they were no longer required to be paid by employees, there would be serious repercussions in the power that unions have. And ultimately, I think with their decrease in power, employees would no longer have a strong enough voice to talk about certain issues, to discuss certain issues. So, I mean, it's hard. It's going to be interesting to see if that passes. In certain states, there have been already a slight decrease in power that unions have seen, and like I said, it really is to balance out the economic problem that we're still dealing with in certain cities and in certain universities. I mean, education, for example, where I'm from, our budget really isn't looking great. So I strongly believe that we probably won't get a wage increase in the next 8 years, probably. So decreasing this or making these union forms no longer mandatory would probably decrease the power that they have to bargain on the behalf of employees. I mean, it really boils down to money. I mean, and it will always boil down to money. So if that gets overturned, I really see a decrease in power, and employers will have the upper hand to implement changes. And that's it. Thank you so much for staying tuned to my chapter, and hopefully you all enjoyed it and learned something from it. Alrighty, see you next time.